So, good evening, one and all, and good evening to our speaker, Professor Guru. We were discussing on Plato's political philosophy. So far, we have discussed, uh, you know, Plato, his introduction, then human nature, and today we will discuss, uh, Platonic state. The exact title is Origin, Nature, and End of the State. So before I go to Professor Guru, you know, I will share my screen with all of you, and I will read it out. And during his lecture, Professor Guru will correct if I am, reading something wrong, and it will be very interesting. So I found something relating to Plato's ideal state. So let me share my screen, and I want all of you to go through it. I hope that you can see my screen. Okay. A brief summary of Plato's ideal state. I'm reading it out. The good life is possible only in and through society. And in bracket, it is state is there. It means without society, you cannot imagine a state. Society, the existence of society, societal values is required for the emergence of the state. Society is a natural institution. Man is essentially a social and political animal. The state exists for the sake of good life. Now, according to Plato, the aim of the good society is neither freedom nor economic well-being. So mark this word. According to Plato, the aim Okay. A true state, therefore, must be conformed to justice, the ideal of which exists in the world of forms. And so the state does not decide what is just. Justice is an object of knowledge. That is, it is one of the forms. That is why the statesman must be a philosopher. If not, he will only lead the state downwards towards self-destruction. Justice in the state is analogous to justice in the individual, and state must be structured after the pattern of justice in the individual. So the justice at the state level depends the justice at the individual level. Now there are some points, notable points in Plato's ideal state, and these points are censorship. This is something interesting I found. Censorship is necessary in the context of education. For the good of the state, all poetry and drama that depicts the god as indulging in gross immorality, violating the oaths and treaties, will be censored. The notion of an absolute right to free artistic expression is, for Plato, absolutely nonsense. Everyone in the state is established in his or her place in society based on ability. Every citizen accepts one's proper place and function for the sake of an idealized society. With this assumption, Plato theoretically created utopian civilization, and this ideal state, as stated by Socrates, achieves justice through education, structure, and training. Education must be for everyone. Education in morality and philosophy is the most important the true and the good. This will be most conducive to the good society. Private property auxiliaries must possess no private property, but receive all necessities from their fellow citizens. They are never to handle gold and silver. Community of wives and children. In the two upper classes, there is to be no private ownership and family life. Marriage relations of citizens of these classes having reason and spirit, should be under the control of the state. Family and private property are not to be abolished on the artisan level. Wisdom must be there, courage must be there, temperance must be there. Wisdom of the state resides in this small class of rulers or guardians. Justice of the state involves the harmony of all parts. All parts means all classes. Everyone attains to his own business without interfering in another's work. An individual person is just when all the elements of the soul function properly in harmony and due subordination of the lower to the higher. So the state is a just only when the society is just, when all the classes and individuals in them perform their duties function in proper way. To prove that justice can exist, Socrates created a state in which justice can be harvested. In this state, every man must have the fundamental basic needs of life, including food, shelter, and clothing, to a reasonable degree. All men are allowed to have these basic rights of life, which Socrates clearly stated. Beyond the basic needs of to live, one must be given certain tasks based on one's ability and traits so he can work. Each man must know his own occupation better than anything else, and he must work hard at his job to ensure community work as well. This allows the society to work to its fullest potential and each person having a purpose and mission to fulfill. Education is the most important task of this step. So I'm not reading the rest part. I think this is the character of Platonic state. And Professor Guru, in his deliberation on Platonic state, he will touch some of the aspect and he will tell us whatever I have read it, whether it is right or wrong. So with this, I am going back to Professor Guru I request him to start his deliberation. Yes, sir, you can continue.
Yes, my dear students and other listeners assembled here to listen to my discussions on Plato's political thought in general, and specifically for today on the origin, nature, and end of the state as envisioned by Plato in the context of designing his model state, the Republic. I hope my discussions on Plato's political thought, and that too on its major aspects, would benefit the students in the context of their understanding of Plato's political ideas, political thought, or political philosophy. But at the same time, before I commence my discussions on Plato's concepts, so far as today's topic is concerned, I'd like to share with you and convey you my dismay specifically relating to what I observe a decline in my interactions with the students. This is my personal perception or observation. I note a decline in interactions, and my perception is manifest in the questions which the students raise at the end of my discussions for the purpose of clarification. What I find, most of the questions are not pertinent or related or relevant to the topic of discussion. What I find, students ask the questions for the sake of asking the questions only, not for the purpose of understanding it, the concepts. Probably, what I feel, they are not able to make a distinction or differentiation between a question and a comment. A question is to be raised specifically concerned the concept of a thinker for the purpose of understanding the meaning of the concepts, for the concepts of understanding the complexities involved in the concept, for the purpose of finding out the logic inherent in the concept. What Plato says, why he says so, how he says so, the questions must be directed to these aspects for the purpose of clarity of understanding. But I find that most of the questions raised by students, whether she is Santilata or whether he is Pratap or anyone else, I find that the questions are in the garb of comments, not questions for understanding the complexities of Plato's concepts and the logic inherent in it. These comments are their observations, their perceptions, their evaluation. But I urge upon the students that for forming an orientation, they must make themselves aware of three components of an orientation. The first one is cognition. You must know it first. And cognition follows your effect and evaluation. Whether you like the concept or dislike the concept, how you evaluate the concept, how you estimate it, it will follow only when you cognize it. So cognition precedes your evaluation and effect, so far as the topic is concerned or the object is concerned. But what I find from the questions raised by the students, probably they're not able to understand the essence of the concepts of Plato, but giving their observations, their statements and comments whimsically. Someone says the soul resides in the heart. They must understand what Plato says. We're not interested in the comments. We're not interested in the observations or perceptions of the readers or the listeners. That will follow later on. The second aspect of our discussions. The first aspect of the discussion concentrates on what Plato says. What are his writings? What are his communications and statements? So far as state and state individual relationships are concerned, that's the first aspect of our discussions. Only when you become clear on these concepts, then only you can develop the ability, the cognitive maturity to find faults with Plato, to evaluate the Plato on the basis of your own assumptions. You are free to do it. But what needs is first to understand what he says, how logically he says. Then only you criticize him that there is no logic in it. He's irrelevant. He's useless. So these conclusions, so these estimations or evaluations must be arrived at later on. But once you understand the logic of Plato, so where his concepts are concerned, it makes us very difficult to find fault with Plato philosophically, conceptually, theoretically. So I urge upon the students, the listeners, to make a distinction between a question and a comment. I'm here and I'm here to answer their questions. I welcome the questions. I'm very much interested to clarify their doubts, their difficulties. When they approach for an understanding of Plato's concepts, I'm not at all interested in the concepts of the question raisers. First, understand what he says, the logic of his concepts, and this in the second part, when we complete the discussions on all aspects of Plato's thought, then you are free to raise your comments, evaluations, estimations, and come to conclusion. Then only clarity of understanding may be obtained. Giving a comment or observation superficially will not serve any purpose. So the students must bear in mind when asking a question that the question must be relevant to and pertinent to Plato's concepts. What he says, why he says, how he says. In that aspects, if they are not able to find out the linkage, if they are not able to go into or investigate into the complexities of the logic of his discussions and conceptualizations, my role is to make them aware of the linkage for the purpose of clarity of understanding. That is the role of the teacher. That is what I understand. Therefore, I urge upon the students to listen to my discussions very carefully and attentively. Because every word that I use in discussing on Plato's concepts carry a definite meaning, a distinct meaning. Every word is relevant. Therefore, the meaning of every word, every term must be understood by the listeners, the students. They must also understand the linkage between the conceptualizations, the concepts, the derivatives that Plato has explained in the process of formulation or formation of his ideal state, the Republic. Yes. Coming to today's topic, as it has already been mentioned and you are aware of, today's topic of discussion is Plato's concept of origin of state, nature of state, and end of the state. So far as this topic is concerned, concerning Plato's Republic, how the Republic has originated or originates, what is the nature of that Republic, the ideal state of Plato, the model state of Plato. All these aspects of Plato's ideal state concerning origin, nature, and end can be amply understood and appreciated, provided we understand the foundational concept of human nature. As I've already told you in last class, the concept of human nature is the foundational concept of a thinker in building his thought on state and state individual relationship. And it is on this concept of human nature which Plato formulates, postulates, on the basis of his deductive approach, on employing the philosophical approach, the normative approach. On this foundational concept of human nature, Plato seeks to design and build his model state, the Republic. He traces the origin of state, the origin of his model state. the state of his vision to this concept of human nature, and therefore it is called as the foundational concept of Plato's political thought. He traces the origin of state to the concept of human nature and what he says on human nature. We have already discussed it. That human nature is the manifestation of human soul, which is the gift of nature. Nature has implanted human soul in the body of the individual, the human being. A soul is the highest part of the body of the individual. It is the directing part, it is the decision-making aspects of human body. And that soul is composed, according to Plato, by three natural elements: reason, spirit, and appetite. These three elements are the gifts of nature. They are implanted by nature in human soul. These three elements, reason, spirit, and appetite, taken together, constitute the soul of the individual. Not equally, but in different proportions, from individual to individual. So in every individual, these three elements are present, yes, he says, but not in same proportions, not in same amount. From individual to individual, the distribution of these three natural elements is found to be different. This basic aspect must be noted. This basic assumption of Plato must be noted in understanding his concept of origin of state, his concept of nature of state, and also the derivative concepts that we have already noted as his concept of philosopher king or concept of education, communism, concept of justice, etc. These three elements constitute human soul, but the distribution of these three elements is not found to be equal. They are found to be different from individual to individual. One element is found to be predominant compared to the other two elements. So the predominance of an element doesn't mean that the other two elements are absent. No. One element is predominant. Reason may be predominant, appetite may be predominant, spirit may be predominant, but it implies that the other two elements are found to be dominated, latent, nascent in the soul of the same individual. And depending upon the predominance of an element, an individual is identified or characterized accordingly. If reason is predominant, he is called as a man of reason. If spirit is predominant, he is to be called as a man of spirit. If appetite is predominant, he is to be identified as a man of appetite. This is how the individual can be actually characterized so far as the performance of the behavior or activities or roles of the individual are concerned. It is to this concept of human nature that Plato traces the origin of his state. And how? You must understand the logic here. Plato makes his concept of human nature the basis of his state. He seeks to build his or design his model state, the republic, on the basis of an analogy of human nature. And that is what he asserts thunderously in his book, The Republic, that the state is the individual writ large. This is the statement of Plato. A very famous statement, a pioneering statement. State is the individual writ large, a statement which was initiated by Plato, given to the intellectuals by Plato for the first time in human history. The state is the individual writ large. So far as Western political thought is concerned, I'm speaking. So the state is the manifestation of the individual. The state represents the individual. How? The qualities of individual soul get manifested and reflected in the nature of the state, in the composition of the state, in the origin of the state as well. State is the individual writ large. Literally speaking or lexically speaking, it means if you expand the individual, writ large. If you enlarge the individual, it becomes the state. That is the literal meaning. But what is substantial meaning? That the state manifests the qualities of the three natural elements which taken together constitute the soul of the individual. So the nature of the state is to be conditioned. Nature of the state is decided, determined on the basis of the qualities of human soul, he says. And it is the qualities of these three elements present in the soul of the individual that initiate the process of origin or genesis of the state, he says. These three elements, reason, spirit, and appetite, these three natural elements, they initiate the process of origin of state. So state originates in human nature in that sense. That must be understood. So nature which is present in the soul of the individual as three natural elements. Reason is a natural element, spirit is a natural element, appetite is a natural element, and each of these three elements, characterized by the distinctive qualities, render distinctive contributions in the context of the genesis or origin of state and evolution of the state as well. So the state originates, state evolves, state grows, state develops, state gets completed in its fullness because of the contributions of these three elements present in the soul of the individual. And Plato explains the contributions of these three elements in the context of formation or genesis of the state, starting with the contributions of the lowly elements appetite, gradually proceeding to an explanation of the contributions of the element of spirit, and ending with an explanation of the contributions of reason. Reason is the highest element of the soul of the individual. Appetite is the lowliest element of the soul of the individual. In between these two elements, there is the element of spirit. And what is the relationship between these three elements or among these three elements? As you already noted, reason and spirit are characterized by selflessness. If these two elements are present, found dominating in the soul of the individual tend to become selfless in thinking, in activities. Whereas the predominance of the element of appetite in the soul of the individual tends to make the individual selfish and selfish to a greater extent. And Plato here commences his explanation of the origin of state with the contributions of the element of appetite. Appetite is the lowliest element, the selfish element. Why it is selfish element? It pertains to the body of the individual. It is exclusively concerned with the maintenance, sustenance, and propagation of this physical body of the individual. Because it is exclusively concerned with the body of the individual, its maintenance, sustenance, and propagation, it is the selfish element. It tends to it tends to make the individual selfish in thinking and activities. But it doesn't mean that this element of appetite is of no importance in the life of the individual. He says the individual is a physical body, no doubt. But essentially, he is a moral being. So physical body must be maintained, sustained, nourished, propagated. Only when the individual exists physically, then only he can think up morally, become selfless in thinking and activities. Therefore, the presence, he says, the presence of this element of appetite, it motivates the individual for satisfaction of the physical needs of life. The satisfaction of the physical needs which are necessary for the maintenance, preservation, sustenance, and propagation of this physical body. And what are the physical needs of life? As you already discussed in earlier classes. These may be classified into four categories, major categories. Need for food, need for clothes, need for shelter, and need for warmth. These four broad types of physical needs of life must be produced, must be appropriated by every individual, whether spirit is predominant, or reason is predominant, or appetite is predominant. But those who have the predominance of the element of appetite in them, the appetite which is mostly concerned with maintenance and sustenance of this physical body. So those individuals who are men of appetite, they are intended by nature, destined by nature, guided and directed by nature to engage themselves for production of these physical necessities of life and their appropriation, their distribution. So these physical needs of life, needs for food, clothes, shelter, and warmth, that cannot be produced for human appropriation by the single and isolated actions or activities of every single individual. The individual by himself is incompetent, incapable also for producing all the physical needs of life for food, clothes, shelter, and warmth. But these physical needs of life must be produced. That is the necessity, what nature desires for sustenance and maintenance of this physical body. And every single individual is incapable, incompetent, insufficient, inadequate to produce all these physical needs of life that he need or require for the physical sustenance of his physical body. So what is to be done? So those individuals who have the element of appetite predominant in them are naturally destined, they are directed by nature to engage themselves in production of these physical needs of life. And consequently, human society is formed. Human society is formed because of the impulsion and compulsion for production and satisfaction of these physical needs of life for food, clothes, shelter, and warmth. Human beings are impelled as well as compelled. They are compelled because every individual by himself or herself is incompetent and inadequate to produce all physical necessities of life. Therefore, he is compelled to seek the help, cooperation of others. And those individuals who have the element of appetite predominant in them, they are impelled by nature, induced by nature, motivated by nature to devote themselves in the activities for production of goods and commodities, crops and grains of various types and kinds. So the physical needs of life, which are produced through inter-individual cooperation, are shared by other individuals, the men of spirit and the men of reason also. Because they have also physical bodies which must be sustained and maintained. They also need food, clothes, shelter, and warmth. So whatever physical needs of life are produced through inter-individual cooperation by the individuals who have the predominance of the element of appetite in them, produced by the men of appetite through inter-individual cooperation, are distributed among all, are shared by all. And consequently, a human society comes into existence. A set of human beings live on a definite territory on this earth, where the men of appetite constitute a class by themselves, the class of the producers, what Plato terms. They are the class of the producers. That is the class of the producers. It is composed of men of appetite. They engage themselves in the production of physical necessities of life. They distribute the physical necessities of life among the rest of the population. A society comes into existence. That is the origin of human society. So human society initially emerges as an organization of human beings bound together by economic nexus. This is the economic factor. Element of appetite is essentially concerned with this economic factor, this economic motivation, this economic drive. So human society emerges or originates as an organization of human beings bound together by an economic nexus. So human society becomes an economic organization initially or originally, because of the contributions of the element of appetite, the lowly elements, the natural element present in the soul of the individual. And these men of appetite, they specialize in the economic functions, in the functions of production of goods and commodities, crops and grains of various types and kinds. The physical necessities of life, they specialize in them, so far as production is concerned. They contribute toward the economic well-being of the society. This is the economic factor. And this is the role of the element of appetite, which initiates the process of evolution, the origin and evolution of the state. Though the state originates initially or originally as an economic organization of human beings bound together by economic nexus or relationship. But when the basic physical needs of life are satisfied through the cooperative activities or endeavors of the men of appetite, the people of the society do not become completely satisfied or contented. They do not rest contented. There generates in their mind, there generates a propensities in them for satisfaction of the needs for refinement, the need for being cultured and civilized, the needs for writing literature, poetry, undertaking activities of music, drama, painting, art, architecture. All these are activities related to culture and civilization. So when the society emerges as an economic organization, subsequently people also develop the needs for satisfaction of refinements. They need literature, they need painting, drawing, music, etc., which would make them civilized and cultured. And at the same time, the human society, which has originated in the economic organization, also expands because of natural procreation of human species among the men of appetite, appetitive class, the producing class. Population increases. On one hand, additional needs are to be fulfilled, needs for refinement are to be fulfilled. At the same time, population increases. What is to be done in such a situation? Plato says, for housing a larger population, a larger territory becomes necessary. So human society must enlarge itself territorially. And there must be also established order and peace, tranquility, stability in the society. This is the need so far as the process, natural process of evolution of the state is concerned. Because of this need, the second stage of the natural process of evolution of the state commences, he says. And herein comes the contributions of the element of spirit. So the element of spirit, which is found predominant in the soul of a group of people, they constitute a class by themselves, what he terms as the military class. Just as the producing class is composed of men of appetite, similarly, the military class is composed of men of spirit. And these men of spirit who constitute the military class, they volunteer themselves naturally. They're intended by nature, destined by nature, directed by nature, guided by nature to undertake activities, behavior, roles for acquisition of a larger territory for housing the population, protecting the territory from external invasion, maintaining a situation of peace and order within the territory. And they work selflessly because spirit is forth in selflessness. They do not work for themselves, they work for the good of all, for establishing a situation of peace and order for all. So herein comes, Plato says, the contribution of the element of spirit in the context of evolution of the state. So the state originates as an economic organization because of the need for fulfilling the physical necessities of life and the needs for refinement as well. But it gradually evolves to become a military organization. A military organization because here we note or notice the role performed selflessly by the men of spirit who are courageous, who are chivalrous, who are patriotic. But once the society evolves into a military organization, also the process of evolution of the state has not yet completed. What is necessary then, what is felt then, is the natural need for deciding public policies for attainment of a life of virtue, which is the ultimate goal or end of human life. So public policies are to be made. Once the society is established as an economic organization, it evolves into a military organization, order and tranquility is established, peace is established, but at the same time, public policies are to be made again. This is the need, natural need. For what? For finding out the ingredients of a life of virtue and making public policies accordingly for its realization. And who is to devote for performing this role, this natural role of deciding public policies for attainment of life of virtue for all, and that to working selflessly. Plato says, here comes in the contribution of the element of reason, which is the highest element of the soul of the individual. So those individuals, Plato says, who have the element of reason predominant in them, they constitute a class by themselves, what he terms as the ruling class. So ruling class, according to Plato, is composed of the men of reason, meaning thereby those individuals in whom the element of reason is found predominant compared to the other two elements. They are naturally fit. They are naturally destined. Nature intends that these men of reason must devote themselves in making public policies for attainment or realization of a life of virtue for all. This is the intention of nature, he says. So the men of reason who constitute the ruling class devote themselves to the natural tasks of decision making. And when this decision making, the need for this decision making emerges, for making of public policies for attainment of a life of virtue for all. The state becomes established. State is the highest political organization for human society, comes into existence when decision-making process prevails. And that is why we call the essence of politics is decision-making. We must understand the term politics in the sense of the inevitability of decision-making. This is the cornerstone of politics. This is the central theme of politics. If there is no decision-making, there is no politics. So Plato says the state becomes established as a rational organization. Human society evolves ultimately into a rational organization when the men of reason constitute the ruling class, devote themselves to the task of making decisions on public policies for attainment of a life of virtue for all. And they work selflessly here also, because reason also issues forth in selflessness, just like spirit. So Plato's state attained its fullness so far its evolution is concerned. Human society attains its fullness only when human society becomes a rational organization. So human society initiates or commences or evolves or emerges initially as an economic organization because of the contribution of the element of appetite, subsequently becomes a military organization because of the contributions of the element of spirit, ultimately becomes a rational organization because of the contribution of the element of reason. And when it becomes a rational organization, the process of evolution of the human society culminates, stops there. A state is formed. The state of Plato's vision is formed then. This is the process of origin and evolution of state in Plato's conceptualization. We may not agree, we may disagree, that is our evolution. But what he says we must learn first. How he explains, what is the logic of his explanation, we must make ourselves aware of first. This is the process of natural evolution. A natural process of evolution, says Plato. So the state is the individual writ large. This is the basic assumption, basic postulate of Plato, which subsequent political thinkers have borrowed from Plato, have been influenced by Plato. Whether he is Aristotle or whether he is Machiavelli, whether he is Hobbes, Locke or Rousseau or Marx or even Rawls. The model state of the thinker must be founded on a concept of human nature on the basis of the fundamental postulate launched by Plato for the first time in human history, that the state is the individual writ large. The state bears, the state reflects, the state manifests the qualities of the mind of the individual. And that also determines the nature of the state. So the nature of the state is essentially characterized by the qualities of mind of the individual who initiates the process of evolution, culminating in the formation of the state as a rational organization, he says. So in every stage of the process of evolution of the state, Plato notices and explains us the contribution of the natural element, which taken together constitute human soul. Starting with appetite, starting with appetite, progressing to spirit, ending with reason. So the state becomes a rational organization. It is essentially characterized by rationality, the rational element, because it is the topmost element. Just as for understanding an individual, we must inquire into his psychology. We are not to give importance to his body. Body is the mere mechanism through which, the apparatus through which the psychology gets manifested. Behavior takes place. But for understanding an individual, we must inquire into the psychology, the soul of the individual, the mind of the individual. Then only you can know him. Then only you can know the nature. Similarly, for knowing the individual, knowing the state, the nature of the state, we must inquire into its constituent factors, natural factors, the natural elements which are present in the soul of the individual and which direct and motivate the individual to contribute toward the formation of the state, towards the evolution of the state, towards the culmination of the state as a rational institution. And why it is a rational institution? Because in the state, the men of reason are the decision makers. They decide, they know what are the ingredients of a life of virtue. They know the truth. They know the idea of the good through rational speculation, contemplation. They're capable of knowing it. Virtue is knowledge, he says, we have already discussed. So it is the ruling class, which is composed of a man of reason, which makes the state a rational organization, a rational institution. And in that state, which is ruled by the ruling class, composed of men of reason as the decision makers, the man of highest reason, the man in whom the element of reason is found to be present to the greatest extent compared to other men of reason. That individual is to become the ruler, the head of the state, the head of the government. And his termed Plato is the philosopher ruler. His termed Plato is the philosopher king. The man of highest reason, according to him, is the man of highest wisdom. He is the man of highest philosophy. And therefore, he may be termed as the philosopher ruler or philosopher king. And that is why we note in Plato's concept of origin and nature of state that the concept of philosopher king of Plato is not a mere addition or insertion from outside. It is the logical conclusion of the entire method on which the construction of Plato's ideal state has proceeded. I'm quoting here the statement of Professor Ernest Barker. It is the logical conclusion. The concept of philosopher king is the logical conclusion of the entire method on which the construction of Plato's ideal state, the republic, has proceeded. If you agree with Plato's basic conception on human nature, assumption on human nature, and if we accept Plato that the state is the individual writ large, we must come to a conclusion that there is no other way except making the man of highest reason the ruler of the state, the philosopher king. This is the natural process. This is the logical process. So Plato's philosopher king is the man of highest reason, man of highest wisdom, man of highest philosophy. He is the highest decision maker because he knows and or he is capable of knowing through rational contemplation the idea of the good, the truth, virtue, the ingredients of virtue which are unchangeable, objective goodness, which is eternal, permanent, universal, valid for all time and clime. And that too, he decides selflessly. And whatever decisions are made by the philosopher king and the members of the ruling class who assist him are implemented faithfully and selflessly by the military class. Therefore, in Plato's ideal state, the philosopher rulers are the ruling class, constitutes of men of reason who are termed by Plato as the perfect guardians. They are the perfect guardians of Plato's ideal state. Their importance cannot be ignored, cannot be minimized. They are of supreme importance in Plato's ideal state because they are capable of deciding the ingredients of a life of virtue selflessly for the good of all. They are capable of giving directions to the people of the state as a whole for undertaking activities, for realizing that goal or end. And the end of the state is attainment of a life of virtue for all. What is the end towards which all human activities are to be directed and addressed? Plato says the goal is a life of virtue. And that can be decided, that can be known. Public policies can be made accordingly by the ruling class, headed by the philosopher king or ruler, and assisted by the members of the military class, the soldiers. So the soldiers are the auxiliary guardians. They also work selflessly for the good of all, for maintaining a situation of peace and order in the society, for implementing the decisions faithfully and selflessly as met by the members of the ruling class, headed by the philosopher king. So the perfect guardians in Plato's ideal state are the rulers, the men of reason. The auxiliary guardians are the soldiers, the members of the military class. Whereas whatever decisions are made by the ruling class and duly implemented selflessly by the members of the military class are obeyed sincerely, faithfully by the members of the producing class. Because element of appetite, who is the represent, is the lowliest element in human soul. They're not capable of rational thinking. They're not capable of rational action. They are only capable of producing goods and commodities for satisfaction of the basic needs of life. So the members of the producing class are to obey whatever decisions are made by the philosopher kings and the members of the ruling class. The members of the military class are also to obey the decisions of the ruling class and implement the decisions faithfully. So the members of the producing class and the members of the military class, they are to obey the decisions of the ruling class. That is because element of reason is the highest element in the soul of the individual. And element of reason issues forth in selflessness, utter selflessness. See here the logic and vision of Plato, the assumptions of Plato. So Plato's ideal state originates and evolves on the basis of an analogy of human nature, quite in conformity with his founding doctrine that the state is the individual writ large. And what is the nature of the state? That we may notice so far as Plato's conceptualizations are concerned. The state, according to Plato, is therefore a natural institution. See here the distinguishing attributes of the nature of Plato's ideal state. State is a natural institution. Why it is a natural institution? Because it is the outcome, the ultimate product of a long process of natural evolution. A process of evolution which has been initiated, directed, controlled, intended by nature, which is present in the soul of the individual as element of reason, spirit, and appetite. It is the ultimate outcome. It is the product of that long process of natural evolution. intended by nature, directed and controlled by the nature. And that is the reason why Plato's state may be said to be, or is said as, a natural institution. At the same time, Plato's state is an organic institution. Why it is an organic institution? Because it is composed of living individuals, not inanimate objects. The members of his state are living individuals who are conscious of the presence of the natural elements in their soul, who work accordingly on the basis of the directions of the and motivations of the predominant element in their soul. Whether he is a man of spirit or man of appetite or man of reason, every individual on the basis of the predominant element of his soul works accordingly on the basis of the natural qualities of his soul. At the same time, every individual is related to every other individual. People of the society taken together, people of the state taken together, are characterized by reciprocal influences and interpenetration. Therefore, Platonic state is an organic state. It is a natural state, at the same time an organic state. At the same time, it is a class-based state. It is a class state because it is composed of three classes of people: the producing class, the military class, and the ruling class taken together constitute the population of, or the social composition of the population of Plato's state. It is a class state. At the same time, it is a moral institution. It is a moral institution. Why? Because the end of the state, the ultimate objective which is sought to be realized through state activities, is a life of virtue for all. An objectively good life, human life. A life which is eternal, which is universal, which is valid for all time and clime, which is not subject to change or flux at any time. That is the aim which is sought to be realized. So because the state, the ultimate end of the state is attainment of a life of virtue, and that is a moral end. That is the reason why the nature of Plato's state is characterized by moralism. It is a rational state because men of reason rule. They are the decision makers. At the same time, even if Plato's state is a class-based state, there are three classes. There is no animosities, there is no enmities or animosities among the people of these three different classes. Rather, there is established perfect unity among them, perfect social harmony, civil accord. Why? Because every individual is essentially a moral being. We have started our discussions with Plato's concept of human nature, that man is essentially a moral being. Why is a moral being? Because he is conscious that the ultimate end of human life is a life of virtue, which must be sought to be attained through human activities and behavior. Therefore, man is a moral being essentially. Even if the element of appetite is predominant in the soul of the men of appetite or the members of the producing class, they obey whatever decisions are made by the rulers, men of reason, and the soldiers, the men of spirit. They keep these three elements present in their human soul under utmost self-control. They are capable of controlling themselves. They only devote themselves to the activities of producing goods and commodities for the satisfaction of the physical needs of life for the people of the society as a whole. But they never challenge the activities of the members of the military class or the decisions of the members of the ruling class. Similarly, the members of the military class, they never challenge the decisions of the members of the ruling class. There is perfect harmony among these three classes, integration among these three classes of people. Because the end is attainment of a life of virtue, a moral life for all. And moreover, what you find here, every individual is conscious of his moral end in life. Every individual exercises utmost self-control in keeping the distribution of the three elements in his soul in right proportion. If element of appetite is predominant, he devotes himself to appetitive activities. If spirit is predominant, he must devote himself to military activities. If reason is predominant, he must devote himself to decision-making activities for deciding the ingredients of a life of virtue and making public policies accordingly. So the members of these three classes, they do not compare oneself with other. There is no comparison, and therefore there is no competition. There is absence of comparison in human beings. There is absence of competition among them also. And therefore there is no conflict. There is no conflict in Platonic society or state. There is absence of conflict. Rather, there prevails utmost peace, tranquility, order, discipline, harmony, and social accord. When conflict arises, only when the individual starts comparing oneself with other. Comparison leads to competition. Competition brings about conflict. And there is a loss of peace. In Plato's ideal state, moreover, there is no competition. We note there is no competition at all among the human beings. Every individual devotes himself to that natural activities or occupation on the basis of the predominant element of his soul as implanted in him by nature. Everything is natural, therefore. So there is no problem for unemployment of the people. Everyone is employed by nature. Everyone is intended by nature to devote himself or herself to that occupation on the basis of the predominant qualities of his soul. So there is no unemployment, there is no absence of occupations, there is no competition, no comparison, no conflict. There is established perfect harmony. There is established perfect harmony, therefore. Civil accord. There is established, therefore, stability of socio-political life. And stability of socio-political life is extremely essential. It is a prerequisite for development of mankind, human progress, progress of the state, development of the state. These are the distinguishing attributes so far as the nature of Plato's ideal state is concerned, or his republic is concerned. It is a natural institution. It is an organic institution. It is a class-based institution. It is a rational institution. It is a moral institution. Everyone is moral. And it is ruled by the philosopher king as the head of the state and government. What is the nature of the philosopher king? What is the structure of his government, functions of the government, and what is the pattern of relationship of the philosopher king with the people, the governed? We shall discuss in subsequent class. That's all for today. Thank you.
So thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Wonderful. If you agree with the assumption of Plato, then you cannot defy Plato.
Yes.
Until and unless you have a selfish interest. And if you are selfless And if you try to criticize Plato, it becomes very difficult. You know, for Plato, I mean, is there any difference between his concept of society and the state? My question is, the balanced society produce the state, or the state produced the balanced society? The answer will be it is reciprocal in nature. Without a balanced society, you cannot imagine a state. At the same time, the job of the state is to maintain harmony among classes and thereby maintaining the balanced society. So we can say that both state and society is a natural institution,
Yes.
and the way both state and society has evolved, it evolved as an economic institution, mainly with the works or deeds of the appetite class. Then when, because of their appetite qualities, when human being, they grow, they need larger territory, and the larger territory requires the security of the territory. And for that security, the man of spirit is required. Men of spirit, basically soldiers. Soldiers are guided by the spirit, not by the economic consideration. That is one aspect we must understand.
Yes.
In
Yes.
contemporary time, we are debating our soldiers are fighting at the border because of package, because of salary. No,
No.
a soldier cannot be a soldier because of economic consideration.
Yes.
A
True.
soldier is a soldier only when he has a spirit of protecting the country or protecting the large territory. And to protect the large territory, a soldier needs to be selfless. And the selfless quality Plato is aligned with not only philosopher king, but also the soldier class. If they are selfish, then the security of the territory or nation state, it will be in a jeopardized condition.
Yes.
But then the security of the territory is also not enough. A land needs a policy to maintain
Yes.
itself domestically and internationally.
Yes.
And who will take the decisions relating to the policies? The policies may be based on, or policies may be related to the security of the territory or the economic transaction that is happened among the appetite class. So it is both the appetite class and the spirit class, they need to obey the decisions made by the reasoned class, because that reasoned class is also selfless, because it is making policies relating to the security of the nation state. Hence, men of spirit must obey it, and it is also making policies relating to the economy. Hence, appetite class must also obey it. There is no class of interest because of their selfness or selflessness qualities. They have a trust that the person who is sitting at the top, he is doing best thing for us. There is no conflict at all. And sir, the way you said state is a organic institution, I interpret it in a different way. Like every organism means I am also an organism. I mean, I have taken birth, then I grow, right? Like that, state also naturally, taken birth, by the qualities of the human soul, and state grows. Since state grows, it becomes an organism. Like individual, the state also evolves, state grows. That's why I think state is a organic institution.
Yes.
So let me, in the initial, I read some sentences, and one of the sentence was, according to Plato, the aim of good society or state is neither freedom nor economic well-being. And here you can compare the nature of today's world and or the nature of today's state and the nature of Platonic state. The nature of today's state primarily it focuses on individual freedom and economic well-being, and thereby the state enters into the arena of conflict. Today's state I'm talking about. The goal or the aim of today's state is not the moral development of the individual, the virtue
Yes.
of the individual. And
Yes.
contrary to the modern state, Platonic state, it is not concentrate or it doesn't concentrate on the freedom or the economic well-being. It concentrates on the morality of the individual. And if individuals are moral, then freedom will automatically there.
Yes.
Economic well-being will also be there. So
Yes.
there will be no conflict, right? So this is the difference between the Platonic state and
Yes.
the
Certainly.
modern
Yes.
nation state. So I mean, I'm not finding any point to uh, go against Plato. But if my students or if the participants they have some interesting point to criticize Plato, and their question must be related on the topic of discussion. That is very important. I also agree with that. People they conceptualize in their own way and they start criticizing and evaluating. And recently I have been victim of it also. Before someone criticize me, someone must understand what is the concept. Then
Yes.
someone can tell me, you know, recently, sir, I am criticized as a person who is having selfish interest, a
Mm.
person who is not having morality. Right. Very unfortunate, very unfortunate.
Very
People,
unfortunate.
they don't understand who, what I am saying, why I am saying. The way they don't understand Plato, they are also not understanding, what I'm
Yes.
saying. Right. So that happens. That happens. So with this, I'm going back to my students, and if they have any questions relating to today's discussion, they may raise their doubts. Yes, any students? And I want my students to participate. So any student? I really don't understand why you people are not asking. Are you all understanding? Can I get a confirmation from all of you? No doubt, sir.
It
So,
indicates two propositions. Either they
yes.
have understood everything and therefore there is nothing to be asked, or they do not understand anything, therefore there is nothing to be asked.
That
I
is
do not
true.
know. Oh,
I
I do
mean,
not know what is the reality.
the reality is that to ask a question, they uh, need to read something, or
Yes, yes,
they must come with their preparation. See, if
yes,
you are prepared, then you can ask. And there are many characteristics of Platonic state. I made again in my initial reading. I made this on censorship. He has
yes.
made a very wonderful
That
point.
that is relating to education. His concept of education.
Yes, yes. Okay, one question has come. I will not go to that. Sir, I mean, will you continue this state or this is the end of the discussion on state. I mean, Plato's political philosophy, it is related. The moment you talk about education or justice, states will also count, right? So it is a interrelated phenomena.
No, I shall go next to the philosopher king, his concept of philosopher king, then to his concept of communism, then to his concept of education, then to his concept of justice. And
So
then I
you
shall,
have partitioned it.
yes, then I shall have a critical evaluation and come to conclusion.
Okay, sir. One question is written by Sriya Pradhan, maybe first year
Hmm.
student. Uh, she is writing, sir, good evening. I want to know why Plato said state is the highest political institution.
Why? What do you mean by the term political? Political is a synonymous with the decision making. If there is no decision making, need for decision making, there is no politics. The
I mean,
need for
let me give the answer. State is the highest institution because state provides policies and direction
yes,
towards the national security and towards managing the economic affairs of the state. State deals with the issues, domestic issues and international issues. So that's why state is the highest authority.
highest
State is
political
the, in fact,
organization.
is the authority. State is
Yes,
the, you can say that state is the vice chancellor.
and that is the reason. The Plato's concept of society and state must be understood in that fashion, in that context. That when the evolution of the society ends, a state emerges. So, state is a political organization. State is a political society. In other terms,
But
you
sir,
may say.
I slightly disagree. I mean, uh, it's a continuous process. The evolution of society is a continuous process,
Hmm.
and the evolution of state is also a continuous process.
That
It
Plato
is,
doesn't agree with it. He says the evolution of the society ends when the society becomes a rational organization and ruled by the ruling class, the men of reason. There it ends
I
because
mean, you are saying,
yes, it
you are
doesn't
saying
continue further. It doesn't continue further.
when state starts,
Hmm.
society ends.
Yes.
That is
Society
what
becomes a
Plato.
political organization. Society is to be termed as a political organization when state is formed.
Acha, acha, you are saying, okay, okay, I got it, got it. Let me make it clarify. You know, uh, society will continues to grow, but at a point, the society will become the state.
Yes.
And when philosopher are the king and king are the philosophers.
Yes.
So that is the end of the society, and society will become the state. So I got my first doubt. I was about to.
That is Plato's concept. We may disagree.
Hey, that's a different thing. I mean, we need to understand the Plato. I mean, the first question I was supposed to ask you, what is the difference between the state and society in context of Plato's political philosophy? I think here lies the answer.
Yes, that
The
is the answer.
okay, I mean, the society will grow. The moment state emerge, the society vanishes. Society
Yes.
becomes the state.
Yes. Society becomes,
Okay,
or it might termed in other words as the political society.
okay, okay. Pratap, you can ask. You have raised your hand.
Sir, Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
Sir, today's class regarding sir, no doubt, but sir, one quotation is there, sir. One class, one function, one duty. I clear,
Hmm.
sir, that philosopher king and soldier class will do one function, but
Yes.
the rest of the appetite class are they are multidimensional functions. Like they have to obey the rules and
They
order of
have
the.
the producing functions.
Okay, sir.
They are asked by the rulers to engage themselves in the functions of producing goods and commodities, crops and grains of various types and kinds as necessary for the sustenance of physical life of the people of the society as a whole.
Sir.
I mean, Pratap, I got your answer. I mean, you are thinking that producing is a multifunctional activities, and this guarding the nation state and making the policies, it is not multifunctional activity.
In the
For your
multifunction
information,
No,
for
no,
your
sir. They are.
information, for your information, guarding the nation state or making the policies or producing, these three are multifunctional activities.
multifunctional. ଆରେ ଯେ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ କରୁଛି ସେ ତାକୁ ତ
sir, sir,
ପ୍ରଥମେ ତ ରେସନ ଯୋଗାଇବ ନା ନାହିଁ ସୋଲଜର୍ସକୁ, ସେଟା ଗୋଟେ ଫଙ୍କସନ ନା ନାହିଁ।
Sir, speak in
sir, sir.
English, sir. I
ଅସ୍ତ୍ର
mean, we
ଶସ୍ତ୍ର
are on record.
Okay, sir. I got it, sir. I got it.
Got
No, sir. Actually, sir, I mean to say that, sir,
he broadly classifies. He
producing.
broadly classifies three types of natural functions. One is
Okay,
producing functions, another is military function, and finally the decision making function.
decision making function. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sir. Sir, I think there is no, other questions. Sir, while discussing on Plato's state, I think it is also useful to understand uh, the influence of Socrates on Plato, especially when Plato is conceptualizing the state.
Yes.
What kind of state was postulated by Socrates, and how Plato, he has developed the postulation of his own teacher. Maybe in the next class you will start from
No,
there
no,
with
no.
the
You must be clear on it. Socrates is essentially a philosopher. Plato is a political philosopher. Plato is concerned with politics, concerned with state and state individualisms, but Socrates was not. Socrates was exclusively concerned with a philosophical way of life and realizing a life of virtue, an objectively good life for the people of the society as a whole. So on politics, Socrates was not at all involved. Plato was Plato involved himself in speculations, in conceptualization on state and state individual relationship.
So are you saying
Therefore,
that
yes.
Socrates,
So
he has
do
not
not
given
yes
any?
do not make Socrates a political thinker. No, Socrates was never a political thinker or political philosopher. Political philosophy commences with Plato. Therefore, Plato is considered to be the first political philosopher and also the foremost political philosopher, the greatest among all political philosophers till date.
I mean, sir, it is also very difficult to distinguish between philosophy and political philosophy. For our sake of understanding, we are doing that. For example, philosophy and political philosophy also, I mean, both deals with the fundamental basic needs of the life,
Yes.
right? So, in that sense, uh, can should not we say that Socrates was not political, because
No,
Socrates
never,
was
never,
dealing with the
never.
life.
He never concerned himself with the decision-making process, with the government, with the state-individual relationship, or with the issues of rights, liberty, equality, justice, political obligation. On these aspects, he never concerned himself. He was essentially concerned with a good life, an objectively good life, a life of virtue. And he taught his students accordingly. And that is the Socratic doctrine. Virtue is knowledge, ideal is real, which Plato inherited.
Ah,
He applied the Socratic teachings in designing his model state, the Republic.
true.
And therefore, he is acknowledged as the first political thinker, political philosopher, not
So
Socrates.
the values what Socrates was
Yes,
having, that
yes,
values, it was the destination for the Plato, and he
yes.
developed the republic. Okay, through
Definitely.
republic you can achieve those values. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much. This is the end of today's session. On behalf of all students and on behalf of our department, Sambalpur University, we are thankful. We have already taken the approval of the Vice Chancellor, and they are quite happy that you are giving your free service from America, and from uh, the last part of November onwards, you will engage with us, physically in the classroom.
Yes,
So thank
but
you.
so far as my web talks are concerned here, you are organizing it. I would like to inform the students that I shall uh, recommence my discussions only after the puja vacation when the department reopens, not in between this,
No, that is
because
true.
Yeah.
Next Friday,
No,
department
not
will
on
offer.
Friday. And moreover, because of my busy schedule, I shall take only one class in a week on Monday only.
Okay.
I'm extremely busy here. I'm here, but I am busy not only with my with playing with my grandson, taking care of him, engaging myself always in the vicinity of that small boy. But at the same time, I'm awfully busy with finalizing the chapters of my
For your book.
forthcoming book on modern political analysis, theories and models.
Mhm. So let
Therefore,
me stop
I'm
recording,
hard
sir. Then
pressed.
we will talk.
Yes. Thank you.